it's a bit unfair to go to someone and say, I want your expertise, but I want to dictate the time, the price, like that you're going to do it in. It's a bit like, well, why are you hiring me then?
Okay.
We have experience doing this thing that you've hired us to do, so we have to have a little bit of control over like how we can accommodate it. Also, sometimes it's just not possible, right?
Welcome to the KLIMB Podcast. Today we have Jonathan Quaade, founding designer at Workflow and previously lead designer at Pentagram. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a ton of different things. His experience as a designer in an agency, and I had a lot of questions about it, of course. And of course, what he does today at Workflow and why their product is super useful for a ton of designers out there, the studios, the agencies, and how it simplifies pretty much our life when it comes to managing feedback and so many different things. So I'm sure you get a lot of value from this episode, and don't hesitate to leave some comments to tell us what you think. Thank you and enjoy. Welcome to the KLIMB Podcast, Jonathan Quaade.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you on. We talked about a bit before, of course, and I really wanted to have this discussion with you today because I've seen a bit about your background on LinkedIn, and you did some stuff that felt like could be super interesting to talk about. Today you have a position as founding designer at Workflow.
Yeah.
So of course we're going to be talking about it, and you can promote it as much as you want.
Cool.
And then it's just as we said, classic discussion, just to talk about your favorite topics, I guess, that are pretty close to mine.
Yeah.
Branding, design, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I do have a lot of questions, of course. The first thing is maybe just if you can present yourself quickly, where you're from, and how did you end up in design? Say.
So I'm Danish-Ugandan. My parents actually met in London, where we are now, 30 odd years ago. So London's always been very close to my heart, just historically. It's the origin place for our family in some ways. And I grew up drawing a lot as a kid. So I was drawing everything all the time, fascinated by it. Seen as a bit of the girly guy in kindergarten because I was drawing all the time, and I wanted to play football, and I was very good at it as well, but
Football?
Soccer, yes.
The real football.
The real football. I mean, soccer is not a thing to me, but we'll accommodate, soccer. And then in skipping forward, I think when I naturally was in high school, I was always doing art. And the path for me was, it was definitely going to be a creative profession. It was going to be architecture or fashion or something like that. But I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And I found out about these foundation courses outside of Denmark that you could go and do, where you could kind of do a breadth of everything. And I went to one in Paris, did a foundation there, and had this sort of like moment late one night with a bunch of friends where we were scrolling through Instagram, and I saw some guys work, and I was like, boom, I want to be a graphic designer.
Okay.
It was kind of
Nice.
hit me. And then I came to Central St. Martin's to do my bachelor's, and then I've been there ever since. I joined Pentagram with Jody and Luke Hudson-Powell, which was my dream. That was the only thing I cared about when I was there, and in university, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then
To join this specific company, you say?
specific company, specific place.
Okay.
I mean, if you ask my friends, like that's the only
You
thing
knew
I
it.
cared about. Yeah, they
Okay.
came to speak in my school, and I watched them present how they were working, and I was just like, I told everyone, and no one knew me at that time. It was like our first week,
Okay.
and I was like, I'm gonna work there. And they're all like, yeah, you know. But I made it happen, and I was there for 4 years. And then the prospect of working at a startup was something that I really wanted to try,
Okay.
because we had been working with startups mostly at my time at Pentagram with Luke and Jody. We
Okay.
did lots of other things, but that was the main thing I was working on. And so I wanted to be there on a product and a team in London that I really thought was admirable. And then I joined Workflow about 6 months ago.
Nice. I love the fact that you know how. I mean, I don't know if you know how, but you drew a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to draw at all, and it's kind of fun because I'm a designer today. But it's really something that I'm seeing in general as like you have these two types of designers, the ones that know how and the ones that don't know. And I'm just curious because maybe I know how, but it's more a generic question. What's your process of drawing? Because it feels like, and still today for me, I know how to draw with let's say a computer because I'm pretty good at designing with my tools. But I always had this imposter syndrome when I taking a pen and just not doing what to do.
Yeah. So I think I had this amazing, in Paris, where I did the foundation year, I had this amazing teacher called Mr. Patterson, a drawing teacher. We had drawing 3 times a week, a couple hours, like very intense. And he had this amazing line I remember once to us. He kept repeating, was like, drawing is not, it's not photography. It's not about you like depicting the real world, right? It's a creative expression. You can draw like photography, but that's not the only way to draw.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this different way of giving everyone like different mediums to use to find their drawing style.
Okay.
So for me, it ended up being pen because I'm very afraid of making mistakes. So pencil was a terrible medium because every line felt erasable, whereas with pen, it couldn't be. So I had to keep drawing over things.
Okay.
And it gave me a lot of freedom in drawing that I didn't have that I never always had when I was younger. When I was younger, I was always trying to draw real things, like good things, and there was like a lot of pressure on it. And pen kind of just gave me a sort of freeness to draw. And I think for other people, it was crayon. Other people, it was drawing in a certain specific style. Maybe it was drawing with lots of circles or like kind of circling the pencil like this, or shading, or standing up, or painting, or whatever. And so I think that's sort of my approach to drawing. So since then, I've actually never drawn with pencil, basically. But I don't draw the way I used to. Like in university, I used to draw like animal feet. Like I used to love drawing hands and feet. And I don't really draw much anymore. You know, I sketch things in a notebook, but with a pen very roughly to kind of get an idea out of my head.
Okay.
But it's not something that I'm going to necessarily like represent in the work or like do illustration.
Okay.
It's much more of a clarifying experience for me, and using pen for me is a way to like not overthink the perfection of it, but get the idea out before I turn to the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not using a digital tablet.
No, I'm not cool like that. I think the serious designers use Wacoms. Let's be honest. You know, like
you're right.
I can't use one. It's too sensitive, and there's something about it. But when I see one, I'm like, you're legit. You're legit.
Okay. Of course, I want to talk about Pentagram.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing for me is I was for a long time I didn't qualify myself as a designer because it felt like, again, imposter syndrome. I was like, you are a designer if you did like design schools, if you did different things. And so along the way, for the past 10 years, I started to approve this way of when people talk about me and they say, Michael is a designer, and so on. Anyway, and because of that, I think I'm a bit losing my my track, but I know where I'm going to go is when I started to work as a freelancer, I started to see the different work from the different people and so on. I started to follow some freelancers that had like crazy records, and I started to look at agencies. And it's not only like a few months ago that I discovered Pentagram. And when I looked at it, I was like, how could I miss this super big agency? Because it's been around for ages. Yeah. And it's probably one of the first like very big design studio, which is, I mean, it's okay if it just online discovered it like a few months ago. It's maybe because I also launched the agency, and now I'm into agencies. And so I'm much more aware of what other agencies are doing. So anyway, when I looked at it, I was like, okay, this agency is legit. And I had this same wow effect potentially as you had when you had this talk about at your school. So I want to know a bit about what was it like to work for Pentagram, and just in general, like general question.
General question. I think, Pentagram, I think, is obviously I haven't worked for many other agencies, but the description I hear from people of other agencies is Pentagram is very unique. in a sense that it was started 50 years ago by 5 founders. who all had
1970 something.
Yeah, 52 or 53 years ago. Remember,
Yeah.
we had a big party for 50 years at the office a while ago. Very fun. And the studio is set up as being 5 practitioners who basically have their own sub-studios below the structure.
Okay.
So you're basically, when you're working at Pentagram, you're kind of working for a tiny studio.
Okay.
It's got big reputation. It's got big, I wouldn't say necessarily like massive resources, but it's got resources that are bigger for what a small agency would have, right? Just because there's 20 odd partners who have, their own teams and they all share finances. So the things you can achieve as a group are bigger than individually.
Okay.
But on a day-to-day, you're really in your pod, right? With your 7 to 14 people that you're working with.
Okay.
So it's kind of an amazing place to work because you get the benefit of the massive agency and the reputation, and people know where you're working, and you get to work on massive clients. But your day-to-day is like working on a tiny team. There is definitely some cross-pollination where you will collaborate on certain teams on certain projects. And so that's also very fun, and you get that exchange of working with different people. But the experience is really like big, small agency in a big organization. But you don't necessarily feel as a designer there, you don't necessarily feel the sort of the massiveness on you in a way. I think the more senior you are, the partners do, because they have to share a lot of the decisions and having lunches together and making sure that everyone sees eyes to eye and doing lots of shares internally, because it has to all work as a group despite everyone having their own individual quote unquote voice in the business. Yeah.
Because this is actually a question that I had, because when I checked on LinkedIn, I think there are like about 600 associated people to Pentagram. Maybe it's more, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's that many people working there.
So
I think it's a classic
less.
LinkedIn inflation thing.
I did one project for Pentagram, and you were adding that to your work experiences. But how many were you at the time? Do you know?
I think in London around between 80 and 100. I think, and New York probably the same. And then there's 2 smaller satellite offices, Austin and Berlin.
Okay. Yeah. And so the question I had related to that is, you talked about decision making, and also what was like the level of ownership that you had during your time, and how did you guys also decide on projects? Because working on creative projects is it's a thing, and so you have a lot of subjectivity in it. And so 2 questions in it. The first one is, how was the decision-making process on your job, and how do you see subjectivity in general in your work?
Okay, on the deciding projects, I have to speak from I don't speak from direct reference here, because I wasn't a partner. I'm not a partner. So I know, generally speaking, how projects get decided on, but of course, I might get some of the nuances wrong because I haven't seen it firsthand. There are generally a couple ways that projects can come through the business. One is directly to a partner. That's how a lot of work comes. Someone specifically reaches out to a partner they've worked with, they have a relationship with them. Also, all the partners always, or most often, will have had their own practice outside before they join Pentagram. There are some exceptions, but they will have a network of people that reach out to them. Or I want to work with John, or I want to work with Luke and Jody, or I want to work with Dominic, or whatever partner. And they will, of course, take on that work. Other times, work can come through the central channel, so they go directly through the new business office. And the new business office will usually ask them, what are the kind of works you're interested in? If there's a strong leaning, it's like they like these 5 projects from Dominic Lipa, then they will say, well, you should probably work with Dominic Lipa, right? They may not know the partner that did the work, but they might have an inclination for that. Or certain industry tendencies might be another way. Other times, they don't really have a clear idea of who they want to work with, and there's not like an obvious partner of choice, and then it can kind of be like, who wants to work with this person? So it's sort of very ad hoc in that way in those scenarios. And sometimes someone will raise their hand and say, I really want to work on this project, and they will take that person on. Generally, Pentagram tries to figure out like who's the right person to work with you on that project. Okay. So that's kind of like how the jobs get decided. There are mechanisms for like not doing the projects. but again, it requires very serious, like it requires a partner really being against someone working on something else. And then on the subjectivity side,
this one, actually, we're going to keep it just
gonna
for
keep
later.
it for later.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it makes the perfect link with workflow, actually.
Okay.
Just to continue on that, because it's interesting for me, regarding projects, what was a typical, what was the typical structure of a team on a project, and what kind of projects? Because at Pentagram, I bet you can do a lot of different topics. And so if you say, let's say brand design, I don't know.
Yeah, so the team I was on was brand design. That was the DNA.
Okay.
Whether that's for startups or for big institutions like Channel 4,
Okay.
which is a British broadcasting network, or Freeze or something like that, the art fair. The structure was generally the same for our team. It was Luke and Jody are brothers, so they share the team together. So it'd be one of them leading that team, the other one assisting on creative direction.
Okay.
Or they would always talk about the work together. Then there would be one project manager, and then there would be an assortment of designers depending on the size and the scale of the project.
Okay.
On average, probably like 2.
Okay.
But there might be 3 or 4 in the beginning helping out with concepts, and then towards the end, there's usually one person all the way through from the beginning to the end.
Okay.
If it's a pure branding project, and then of course also a motion designer, we'd have as well. Motion was a huge part of what we're doing in 3D. So early on experimentation, there was always motion involved.
Okay.
That was usually the scale. So on average, probably like 5 people, and then we might top up with freelancers and stuff. But I think the average number on a project is like 5 to 4, around that range.
And when you were working on a project, were you focused on that only project, or did you have several projects at the same time?
Yeah, you would generally be just focused on that project.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there are some exceptions, like the motion designers. They would often be doing multiple projects because they would have different requirements at different times.
Okay.
There also might be projects that aren't ready for motion at that time, so they're kind of assisting a little bit, or a little experiment someone wants to do, and then they go off and do a different thing. So it was a constant discussion between Luke and Jody and the project managers to like figure out who needs what at what time, and sometimes also we presented routes that were very motion led and needed motion designers.
Mm-hmm.
So it required that person to be there very full time. We might hire someone in on a freelance basis, but it was sort of seen in that way, so a bit flexible. And then my role as well as digital design lead meant that oftentimes, I would also just be on one project.
Okay.
But sometimes some projects needed some assistance on a certain area, so I'd be splitting my time a little bit. But generally speaking, it was very much you're on this project for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever. Like that's what you're doing.
Okay.
Or you're on concept development for this project for 1 month, and then this other project starting that you're going to be the main person on, and so you're going to go move to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the question that is linked to that for me is, for instance, when I sign a client, we have the kickoff meeting, and then most of the time, let's say it's brand design work, I'm like, we're going to be coming back to you next week on the first iteration because the client needs something quite fast. How did you manage deadlines and timelines on typical brand design projects?
The schedule was set out like before. So before the project even started, everyone knew when the first share was going to be.
Okay.
Generally speaking, we would try to accommodate to the needs of the client.
Okay.
But I think also the big emphasis all the time was like, if you want quality, then this is kind of
how long it
takes. We will be flexible within your remit or whatever deadline you have. But, if
you're trying to impose a bit your rhythm,
you have to basically, right? Like it's a bit unfair to go to someone and say, I want your expertise, but I want to dictate the time, the price, that you're going to do it in. It's a bit like, well, why are you hiring me then?
Okay.
We have experience doing this thing that you've hired us to do, so we have to have a little bit of control over like how we can accommodate it. Also, sometimes it's just not possible, right? I want it next week, but we've got 4 other clients right now, and we can work with you in July. What do you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of that. There are times when when you could feel that a team could accommodate also quick shares.
Okay.
But I think also you have to have an organization that really can accommodate that.
Yeah.
The iteration, if you're sharing that often, you also need feedback much more often as well, because otherwise you're just sitting around and your team is not allocated to stuff, and you're just basically wasting money, or people getting frustrated. So I think a lot of times it was like, here's a schedule for we're going to do stuff. You're going to get your first share in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. Oftentimes it'd also be strategy as well. Okay. So we'd be doing the strategy up front. We'd be kind of designing concurrently, but there's a bunch of shares that are strategy related, maybe over the first 2 or 3 weeks. Then you're getting your first concept share at that point.
Okay.
Where designers may be just exploring ideas and the landscape, and we're getting familiar with the space. And particularly for the work I was doing, it was a lot of like deep tech startups. Like Cohere was large language models before people knew what that was.
Okay.
So we had to even understand what it was and find ways of explaining the technology to developers who didn't know what it was at the time. ChatGPT solved all those problems, but that was something you had to really get into. So it involved us just playing with the software and doing lots of meetings with them.
Okay.
So there was no way we could have shared anything useful with them design-wise in just a week.
Okay.
We felt on that project. And there was also a lot of strategy to do as well, which we were a part of. So
okay.
Yeah.
And so what do you love the most about brand design? The more the strategy part, the execution, a bit of everything. Where's like your sweet spot?
I think I love just getting really deep in on the problem and the industry. I think when you do branding, it's basically a cheat code to be interested in lots of things and get the excuse to basically get obsessed about quantum computing 1 week, televisions the next week, large language models the other week, art fairs the next week, whatever you're doing. It's kind of unfair. And I get to I get to ask experts about where the world is heading in like 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of insane. So I think that's what I love the most, really digging into like, how does the technology work? Maybe if it's a software company, I would start experimenting with their actual product, you know, like downloading it and getting in and signing up for an account and trying to build something with it. Or start watching documentaries about quantum computing or reading stuff like that. I feel like that mode gets me making the best work. And it's also the only way I can do stuff. Like I'm either obsessed with it or I'm not, basically.
Yeah.
So
I completely share this mindset. And I think it's a good learning for my designers because I think it gives you this unfair advantage. And when you are very obsessed about the topic, you get to know things that the others don't. Yeah. And in the end, when you get to execute the work and design something, the one thing that you're going to design is going to be so much relevant that you're going to save time for everyone. The number of iterations is going to be, you're going to have less iterations and so on. And so I completely agree with that. I think getting context is underrated. And most of the time when you're a designer in a team, and I see that in a lot of the projects, you get a brief. It's like some tagline, some content, just some things that the client thinks needs. And in the end, what the client really needs is for you to really understand what's before and what's coming after. Yeah. And when you're just designing a simple thing, let's say an ad visual just for LinkedIn, well, what's going to be on the ad? It's going to be a process before, because what's going to be the questions that people are asking themselves, like your personas and so on, how does it translate then to the ad? And once you click on the ad, it's not just the ad, it's what's coming after. What's the landing page behind the ad? And so when you're designing, this is actually a tip that was shared like in another podcast that was with the VP designer at Conto, which is a pretty big French bank. Yeah. And he said, when designers come to me, I want them not just to share like the one screenshot they're working on, but what's before and after. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
So you talked a lot, and you helped me with the transitions. You talked a lot about feedback. And as I said, I wanted your take on subjectivity, but subjectivity is also how you manage your own subjectivity, of course, on projects and how you're being objective with the context, but also how do you manage the subjectivity of others and how do you get all of that feedback and how do you work on feedback? And that's the good thing because we're working on that problem on a day-to-day basis. So can you tell a bit more about what is workflow? And why do you think it's an important problem to solve and how you're solving it?
So workflow is a tool that helps designers get feedback on their creative work. That's what it is today. There's a longer term piece to workflow, which I'll get into later. But today, the simple problem is that there's a lot of logistics around how to get feedback on your work that we sort of ignored or we sort of accept in a way. You know, the key example that we talk about a lot is if you're sending like for example, a video to get feedback on a video, then the feedback has to come back in an email, you know. The client might be looking at a weird size. They might not be looking at a full screen. They might have a different screen resolution, and they have to leave feedback in this very uncomfortable format of like timestamping everything and trying to describe the moment, you know. That experience happened across many assets. The main one we talk about today is websites, where if you're getting feedback on a website, I mean, you're opening a Trello board, you're creating a spreadsheet. No one likes the experience. You're having to take screenshots of everything. And it stops you actually focusing on the actual point of the feedback, which is to move the website forward to the product, like to the end production, and giving good feedback on specific things. So what Workflow offers you is that you can just basically upload anything to Workflow, whether it's video, website, images, Figma files, PDFs, presentations, Photoshop files. You can take stuff from Figma directly and put it in. And if you're especially dealing with stakeholders who are not native in any of those softwares, like Figma, for example, you can send them a link where all they see is that work in front of them. And on a website, they can just leave comments and it will stay exactly where they left the comment. We're working on a lot of ideas to help that experience so that, especially when you share with clients, they just focus on the thing that matters, which is the latest thing that you've shared, you know, and not everything else. And then the beauty of that is that if you start to do that more often, you can share your wireframe in there. You can share the first round design, second round design, third round design, the first round of the website. And that full context of the project now sits in one place. So you don't have to do the thing of like, what was that thing that was said last time? Did the client approve it? No, because there's a button that they have to click to approve it. You're not getting feedback ad hoc because you can pause comments. And the only place they can see the work is in Workflow and there's nowhere else to look at it. So the repetitiveness of going to the same link and just killing all the logistics around feedback just go away, you know? And so that's the thing we're very obsessed with today. And it's something that I dealt with a lot, making lots of massive websites and trying to get feedback for them for clients at Pentagram and other places was a massive pain, to be honest.
I bet. I mean, I live it on the day-to-day.
Exactly.
And how but the first question, for instance, I have, because I just signed up for Workflow and so on, and I'm going to be using it for a first use case, is like, still I have a lot of tools today. And so is it just like another tool, and how does it potentially integrate with the suite that I have?
So I think this you're great at transitions. So this goes to the second part. So I think long term, there are problems that designers will face that are unique to designers. And then in the today and now, there's another issue with the way the tools designers use around managing their work. So in the here and now, if you think about any project management tool that designers use, there's an inherent problem, which is that it's not actually where the work happens, right?
Yes.
So you go on Notion, it's a ticket. It's a ticket Jira in Notion or Jira or Asana or Monday or whatever. It's designed for a process that's not really the creative process. And I remember every place I've been to, we try to create some Notion board with managing tasks or managing feedback or whatever. But the project management's over here, but my design is over there, right? Big problem. Because I'm never going to default to my Notion task. I'm going to default back to my work. The tasks are in there, the comments are in there, the feedback is in there, especially with Figma now. And the project management suite is not built for that process, right? It feels it feels like you're tacking on things. You're trying to like put a link to Figma in there, but I can't edit it, but the client comments it in an email or something like that. So really we see workflow long term as becoming the operating system for design agencies and studios and designers in general, where because you're uploading your work for feedback and all the feedback and discussion sits on the assets in workflow, that's a project you can then have and a task you have in there. So every time you need to share feedback with someone in your team, or you need to share it with someone outside, that task sits inside workflow. And we can build project management suites around that for you. So long term, we imagine, you're probably doing project scoping in there through timelines. You're doing invoicing, you're doing storage, you're creating brand assets, you're briefing the client, you have your client portal there as well. And so we have to be able to accommodate, this is the future point, we have to be able to accommodate the fact that we're on the verge of this explosion of surfaces that design is going to happen in, right? AI is just going to blow up the demand for designers.
Yeah.
And you can barely keep on top of things today. My favorite stat is that Wimbledon had to create, I think, around 1,000 pieces of content in 2 weeks last year.
Okay.
What is your feedback process for that? That is insane. Like who is approving stuff, when and how? How do you track what's approved? And I think agencies and designers and in-house teams are just going to get this avalanche of demand because it's quicker to make things, but you're still going to need someone to approve it, some mechanism of doing it. So we hope that we'll be able to build in lots of suites for you, like automatic checking for type spelling, so that when someone looks at it, they don't have to see, oh my God, there's a little typo over there in the corner. And you're like, oh my God, that threw off like 5 hours of work. Because otherwise it's perfect, but that typo threw it off, or accessibility checks or standards in industries or whatever. So long term, we see workflow as becoming a place for you to actually take away a lot of those tools that aren't built for designers and build something for creatives that they can actually use.
Because it makes me think of what you're saying is it's a lot of change in habits for designers. And so how do you operate this change management for your new customers, and potentially if yet people are not customers of workflow, how they can, I don't know if I can say it's a good word in English, like envision seeing working with this tool, not changing too much their habits, and potentially creating the new good habits that should be created and should be in place already. And because people are still working across so many different tools and so many different ways of getting feedback, they're maybe just used to it. So they accommodate, and they just hire the project leader to just be this source of truth and the one guy that's going to go in everywhere to just get the right information. And it's reminding me of a tool that is called Super, that is like some kind of big search engine for all your tools. And so it's a bit like around knowledge management. So there is potentially in workflow a bit of that in the future, or maybe it's already today. So how do you see all of that?
I think that's why for us it boils down to providing enough reason to upload your work to workflow in the first place for the creative person is essential. So all this dream around project management and automations and AI checking your work, all of that doesn't matter if it's not more valuable to get feedback on your work and workflow than it is in some other way. So the work required to get feedback on your website and workflow categorically is less work than doing it in any other way. I don't have to create a spreadsheet. I can resolve comments in there. I don't have to ask the client where the thing is. They don't have to worry where the link is, because even if I'm changing it, it's the same place. They don't have to create an account to sign up for the client, so I don't have to worry about giving them access to things. I can just pop a link, which is the same experience as before, except I'm putting the link in workflow. But all that management I have to do to like track the feedback, I don't have to do it. It's just in workflow. Great. I can see all the comments. I can auto-resolve things. I can upload attachments. We're working on features where, like, in case there is like an animation or something, we'll take a screenshot in the background for you so that you can see what the client was looking at the time. In case even there's an animation or something that they were looking at, or they were on a screen size that they weren't relevant to you.
A bit like a Hotjar, but for regarding looking
A bit what?
a bit like Hotjar. Do you know Hotjar?
Not very well, no.
It's like a tool recording your screen when you're
Yeah.
browsing a website.
Yeah, a little bit like that, yeah.
Okay.
But we just do it in the instance that the client like left a comment, basically.
Okay.
We're not tracking the whole time, but what we can do is we can detect the screen size that they're on, for example. So you
Mhm.
always know if it was Chrome or Safari or a desktop or mobile or whatever. You don't have to ask them like what screen were you looking
Mhm.
at, you know? And all that stuff is just less painful. I don't think there's a better experience, to be honest. And that goes for lots of different things as well. So if you're a team that has lots of different kinds of assets that you're working with, if you're doing branding nowadays, you have to do still images, photography, the logo, the website, maybe animations, maybe photography, maybe you're writing documents or whatever. Having that feedback across 5 different platforms is just annoying.
Mm.
So if we're able to create something where like the experience is delightful for you and your client on all those assets, and it's maybe not as good as, we can be better than every single thing out there, but we can be 80% to 90% of the value. And if you can send your client one link and it's, here is the thing you need to give feedback on today,
Yeah.
and here's the stuff you've already given feedback on, and they just have to click, boom, 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 I love this, done. That's an amazing removal of this like hassle of like chasing the client, making sure they know where the work is. We'll educate the client as well. So you'll send the link and we'll have a tutorial for them.
Mm.
You never have to teach them how to use the software.
Okay.
So that's how we look at it. It relies on us giving you a delightful experience and your reviewer a delightful experience, not trying to solve project management in the abstract, which for me, we end up just becoming like an Asana.
You're right.
Which is an amazing product, by the way. But for designers, it's a bit like, why am I using this thing?
Yeah, you're right. As you said, the work is in one place, the project management is in one
Another
place.
place,
So let's potentially just bridge the gap.
yeah.
So I realized that we talked about a lot about workflow,
Yeah.
but not too much about what you do really at workflow. And so can you tell us a bit about this role of founding designer?
Yeah.
Because it's something that is quite new in startups.
Yeah.
And what's the definition already in your case?
I think the founding designer is, what's the definition of founding designer?
He doesn't know what he's doing.
No, I think I'm trying to think of like, it's easy to describe what I do, but if you're trying to think about like what is a sort of a term that could describe what you do, I think you're basically trying to it's basically in the title, I think. You're trying to set the foundation for design.
Mm-hmm.
I think depending on where you are, it can be very different. If you're in a digital software company like mine, you know, the first and utmost priority is that the experience in the product is providing the thing that people are expecting, that we're going above and beyond to make it a delightful place to be and use, and that the emphasis on that is the most important, right?
Yeah.
Then there are all these other things around it, like how are we dealing with growth or marketing? How are we setting the culture within the company to make sure that if we add other people and when we add other people that they have a structure to work towards? What are our approaches of dealing with engineering and stuff like that? So that design becomes a function that can operate well within all the other parts of the business and can talk to them and work with them well. And not just be like a thing you tack on at the end, right? Mm. And so I think that's basically your job. That means being very flexible, being very adaptable, having like, I think every one of my days has like some ad hoc request out of nowhere.
Okay.
Oh, we're launching a demo thing because people need demos. So we need a YouTube video, we need a thumbnail. You got 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, Jesus, right? I'd have no system for this because we hadn't expected it. Or we're changing the website because we're noticing this thing. Like, can you redesign these 4 modules? You know, great. I don't have a system for that because I haven't built it. So you're just having to like constantly make a little bit of improvement to the design culture, the design language, to the brand system, and just kind of make little improvements everywhere. Yeah. And kind of do just enough to stay above water. That's kind of what it's like. It's really fun though, I think. Yeah. Yeah. It's really fun to be integral to the business in that way early on. And because you're part of the outward expression and like the outward expression of the company, you kind of get involved in everything.
Yeah.
So there's almost no conversation that I can't be involved in or shouldn't be involved in some way. You know, whether it's we're talking about our pricing, great. Yeah, we have this pricing structure, but how do we communicate that?
Mm.
Yes, marketing has to be involved, operation has to be involved, but design has to be involved as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay. And so it makes me think about this, also this shift that you did, because you worked in an agency and then
Yeah.
you're working now full time for just one company.
yeah.
And so how did you adapt, and what's like the big learning you're experiencing?
I think there's a cliche but true term, which is when you're in an agency and you're working for clients, you're trying to deliver perfection, right?
Mhm.
You're trying to deliver the best possible outcome in this moment of time.
Yeah, 3 months. That's it.
The client, you got the moment in time, and you're giving the time and space and resources to do that, and it's an incredibly difficult job because you're not privy to the internals of the company, how things work. You
Mm.
can't interject into conversations
Yeah.
when they're reviewing the work to kind of support your idea. You don't understand the culture of that company super well, no
Yeah.
matter how much time you spend with them. You
Going
don't
back to the context.
the context, you don't understand the internal dynamics, but you're trying to give these people a toolbox of things that they can go on and succeed in their next journey, right?
Yeah.
And the brand might take a very similar shape to what you expected. It might take a very different one.
Yeah.
And the delivery on you is expected for it to be great, you know, on when you're done, it's supposed to be amazing, right?
Yeah.
That's the expectation. When you're in-house now, it's exactly this. I think for me, what I was doing is basically the same work.
Mhm.
It's not any different, but I just have to think about things a lot more as, can I make it a little bit better today? And I think that's the cliche, because I have many important things to work on. And if I was in a brand mode, I would think to myself, what's the system of our thumbnails for YouTube? What's our system for how we roll out ads?
Mhm.
But I don't have the time to spend a week thinking about how do we accommodate all the edge cases.
Yeah.
I have to just kind of think a couple steps ahead. How can we do this today that looks good? Then the next time we get a scenario that didn't work with what I've got, I have to adapt the system to accommodate it.
Okay.
So you have to just be a lot more. It's very hard. It's like an uncomfortable muscle when you come from agencies to
Mhm.
kind of be like, I know it's not perfect,
Mhm.
but I need to sleep, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I need to do something else. So I have
Iteration over
to iteration.
perfection.
Yeah, literally. And it's hard also in a business where we're really we care about the quality of what we're making so much.
Mm.
So it's very hard as well to be like, we got to stop this now because it's taking too long and we have to finish it so we can do something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One other question that not one other question, because I do have several questions, but I took this question from, I think, Stripe launched a podcast recently.
Okay.
It's like a big thing. It's like it's on stage in front of a big crowd,
Right.
and they have like one guest, and it's like a superstar. And I mentioned this already, and the CEO of Stripe asked this question to the CEO of NVIDIA.
Okay.
And I love the question because it's super simple, but it's like, how is your work-life balance?
Oh, wow. I think for me right now, it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty good. When I joined Workflow, there was a real tendency for me to work a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of anything anyone else was doing, but just I was like working all the time, right?
Okay.
So first couple of weeks I was spending a lot of time in the office, and I was just excited about the problem and getting up to speed and stuff. And I had a pretty good idea that like this is not sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I don't create time for myself. So I've become very religious on my morning routine and how I get up in the morning and making time for exercising.
Okay.
And those hours are like blocked, for me. So I show up a little bit later than everyone else does at the office, but for me that's really important so that I can stay later and I can feel focused.
Okay.
And even when we have a really busy period, I'm not moving that
Okay.
around, because it just gives me that little bit of space to like breathe and like have my own thing and not be on my phone and not have messages or even worry about the work. So I think right now I have to say it's pretty good. I think also there's a huge emphasis on the company of Will always talks about we need CEO. Will always talks about you need 4 hours of focused work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not getting it, you can leave any meeting, you can object to any request, you can whatever. You just need to get your 4 hours of work done.
Okay.
So we're trying to be very, very, very focused on you need to get your work done in a good amount of time. And then anything else is sort of anything else is secondary, right? The project you're on is the most important thing. You need to get 4 hours at least a day. And I think in that way, it also means that we can work much more efficiently and much better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. You can get a lot more done in not so many hours in the end if you're super focused.
Yeah.
And something super also related to, because you mentioned the fact that you're going to the office, it's also related to the way you work at the office. For instance, what I love to do at the office is to have two different rooms. One is silent room, and the other one is like you can talk to in it. And when you go to the silent room, it's like you know that you're in the different mode.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. It's a question also I wanted to ask is would you define the culture at Workflow today? Like how do you guys are building the company and how do you maybe adapt your culture?
Yeah, I think it's hard to describe a culture really.
Yeah.
I think the thing we have to be is we have to be quality oriented before anything else.
Mm-hmm.
We are, I mean, in a way, I am selling the product to myself. Like I am I would be one of the core users. I am one of the core users. I probably use the product more than almost anyone else in the world right now, which is kind of crazy to say, but yeah, I do. And so it has to feel great for us internally, right?
Yeah.
And especially for someone like me who is a person we would be otherwise trying to get to see the benefit of using Workflow. So that's the main thing. So it's fine if we're on the fifth round of me telling the engineer like no, like the underline on the button needs to be 1 pixel lower, then that's the bar, right?
Okay.
We have ways of overriding that mechanism, but that's generally the bar, right?
Okay.
So, and we just spend a lot of time on those kind of things. So quality oriented is a huge part. Then I think the second part is that we're quite accommodating of people's focus, I would say. So in the office, we have this policy again, where if you're starting a discussion in the common space that you think is not beneficial for everyone in the room to hear, you leave.
Okay.
So you can, if it's a quick thing like, hey, Michael, can you pass me the water? Yeah, to speak, right? Or a little bit about some question you have, fine. But if it's going to be a long discussion that maybe is not beneficial for everyone to hear, then you decide and go find another space to work so people can stay focused. Because we were just finding that the engineers would be doing pair programming together, or Will and I would be talking about some feature for like 3 hours, and it was just distracting everyone. And then I think apart from that, it's just very friendly. Everyone's very nice.
Okay.
We go for lunch together and stuff. Everyone eats very early, which is a British thing. So I go downstairs and I sit with everyone, and then I have my lunch later because, you know, I lived in France, so you eat at like 2. Feels like a good time to eat, 1, 2.
Okay.
So I think that's the bit of the culture.
You're all based in London?
Everyone's based in London, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone has to be based in London. You have to be in the office 3 days a week.
Okay.
And that's not negotiable.
Got it.
Yeah.
And the last question is going to be this one. What if you were not a designer, what would you do?
I will make my grandmother proud. I would probably say I'd be a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd probably be a teacher.
Is it something you tried already?
No, but my grandmother, she often asks me for advice on her computer.
Okay.
So I make trips or calls to her to like figure out some issues. So Google had this new dual verification thing that she was very confused by, and I was on the phone with her for an hour to try to make sure that she felt comfortable with everything.
Okay.
And she always tells me that I should be a teacher. She also was a teacher herself.
Okay.
And then recently I went back to my old university, CSM, and I did this talk there about how to see the opportunities that you want out there in the world and figure out how to open those doors. And the reaction I just got from those young people was incredible. It was
nice.
so rewarding. And so I think I would have had a very different answer 6 months ago to this one. But I think if I'm going after feeling good and doing exciting things and feeling value from my work above everything else, then I probably would be remiss to not try teaching if I couldn't design anymore, you know,
Yeah.
in some capacity. You know, that doesn't mean I necessarily would be in a school, but I would probably be doing teaching of some kind.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Makes sense. I think
Yeah.
in the way you're explaining and answering answers, for instance, today, you are very calm and also trying to choose wisely your words. And I think it's also why it makes sense, because when I'm hearing what you said, I know that you are trying to explain the things with the right words, and sometimes also being super simple about things that are complex.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
You
get
should
it.
please email my grandma and say that to her.
I
She'll
will.
be very happy.
I will send her the
The
podcast.
snippet, yeah,
snippet.
please. Yeah, please.
All right. I think we're good. Can wrap up.
Amazing.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. It was a super interesting discussion, really. I learned a ton of things. I loved everything we talked about, from your early days as a drawer and your work at Pentagram and what you're doing for workflow. I love the mission. I can't wait really to try and see how we can really implement also workflow in our day-to-day workflow.
Yes.
Because I really think it's a mission worth solving. So
yes. And please, let me know your experience of using it. We want to be useful for people like you, who run agencies. So if you have any feedback,
definitely,
I really want to hear it. Yeah.
Will do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you liked it. And don't forget also to have a look at the other ones. We have plenty of others also coming your way. So don't hesitate to either subscribe to the YouTube channel, have a look at the Spotify episodes or Apple Podcasts, depending on the way you want to consume your information. And I hope you enjoyed.